Yo, what's happening, friends and family? What up, guys? Bonisile and here for the Nos podcast. So, Champions League quarterfinals done, and some really good football this week. If you're not an Arsenal fan, you probably enjoyed a lot of it. But a quarter of the games was obviously the game that involved Arsenal yesterday, and that was the least enjoyable of all the quarterfinals, to be fair. Unless you just, obviously you just cared about the result. The result is great because you'd rather be an Arsenal fan than be, a Barcelona fan because they didn't go through, or a Real Madrid fan because they didn't go through, or a Sporting fan because they didn't go through. Did I miss anybody else who was knocked out in the Champions League this week? I think Liverpool. Yes, how could I forget about them? The English team. So yeah, I think the Barca Atleti game was a game that had a lot of actually the whole tie. Barca got two red cards, one in each game. It could have been worse actually in the second leg because they just put themselves under a lot of pressure. It gives them a great deal of advantages, within a game to play the way they do, to compress the game into one half of the pitch, high line, regardless how speedy their center backs are, regardless how pacey the forwards that they playing against are. So, they've definitely decided that they're gonna die on that hill under German dude, Hansi Flick. So Hansi Flick is a good coach, and I know of many, many Arsenal fans who want to see him at Arsenal, but it doesn't look like he's going anywhere, first of all, because Barcelona have renewed him. And not that contracts mean people will never leave. But the interesting thing about Flick's team is, of course, you have to feel for them that they didn't have Rafinha for another casualty, from the previous international break. I also think Kubasi being sent off that early in that first leg just meant Barca were always playing catch up, and they did well enough in this game, kind of like Madrid did against Bayern. Like they did well enough to claw their way back into the game, but because of the way they play and they're never going to change, it just meant that Atleti, because they came back with a two-goal lead, they were always going to like their chances to get at least one goal, right? Like to get something out of at home. And they did just enough, they did just that. But most people who love sexy football, which is a lot of football fans, including myself, would have loved to see Barcelona go through. But at the end of the day, you can't want to have it both ways as a fan. You know what I mean? Like I know a lot of people, for example, are resentful about the fact that Arsenal is through, right? And I've had to ask myself, like, yes, I would have had more fun watching Barcelona this last 2 weeks. And I would have had more fun watching Real Madrid these last 2 weeks. And I've had a lot of fun watching Arsenal play in previous years and then getting knocked out, literally bounced out of last 16, last eight in the Champions League. I remember losing out to Olympiacos. I remember losing out to not PSV, sorry. Yeah, PSV Eindhoven with the guy who ended up playing at Chelsea, the Brazilian defender. I think his name was Alex. I remember Arsenal getting knocked out by Monaco. And I'm naming these teams because these were the kind of like underdog teams in all of these ties against Arsenal, and they knocked Arsenal out. A pretty football playing Arsenal. And then Arsenal obviously did get some misfortunes of, getting drawn for like maybe 5 or so years in a row, either against Barcelona or Bayern Munich, something stupid like that, because that's what happens when you're in the Champions League a lot. You start playing a lot of the same teams, because the draw is what it is, and you have to face that confrontation. And I remember going home to Barcelona a lot of times, including the glorious failure where Xavi scores, right? So I'm in a very like football existential crisis of sorts, I guess, because I clearly and anyone who's listened to any of my podcasts talking about Arsenal, I'm not enjoying the football. I'm not going to front here. I'm not going to try to gaslight people into saying you should feel different about what you're looking at. I'm not going to be that guy. However, I'm also not going to be that guy who's going to whine when my team basically scraps and gets something out of games. I don't know how long this can continue, but at some point, I've had to ask myself the question, right? Like, would I rather be seeing pretty football and looking like Liverpool, or pretty football and looking like Chelsea, or pretty football and being United for the last few years, right? Like, because they've played some pretty stuff as well, especially, in the Carrick days, but also before Amorim. Ten Hag did have some stuff, that looked good, and they've signed big players. But we're in a results game. That's what we say as fans when the team loses. Like, look at what's happened at Arsenal, right? Like, they've lost 3 of the last 4 games, and people have forgotten about the entirety of the season. So results do drive how we feel, and I think results drive how we feel more than style. And I know style is the blanket people kind of like cover themselves under when you're losing games, when you're not winning. But when you have the option to play winning football, however ugly it is, I think when you haven't won the Premier League in 22 years and you've never won the Champions League ever, I think it's okay to try different things. And I'm suffering like watching some of these games. I'm not gonna lie. I've been really struggling big time watching Arsenal play football this last season, even when we were winning. And I've said this on pods, I've said it in chats with friends, that I feel like I'm watching, a version of Arsenal that makes watching matches, even for you, the Arsenal fan, feel like going to the dentist, like, you're gonna have good teeth, or you're gonna have, a crown or a root canal or whatever. You're gonna enjoy the outcome, but the process of getting there, that's not fun. You know what I mean? Everybody loves having nice teeth, but sometimes you do have to go to the dentist and do the hard stuff, because maybe either genetically, or some, or lack of healthcare, or lack of dental care specifically for some people, right? Like, I'm using this example deliberately. Some people don't care about like winning this way. They don't have time for it, but I'm giving it a go because I don't know, first of all, if I have a manager right now who's able to do anything different. And I don't know if I have a manager at Arsenal who was able to flip the switch this late in the season. This is who we are this season, and we're going to lean in on our defense, and we're going to go to the Etihad. And what I don't want to do is to not acknowledge what the players are doing for this club. I think Arsenal players are looking really, really tired, and they're doing the best they can for the fans, for the football club, and for themselves, for their careers. And those who've been on this journey with Arteta the last 6 or so years are going to hopefully get something at the end of the season. It doesn't look like it, doesn't feel like it, because of what Arsenal has done post-international break, post-Carabao Cup final, if you want to go that far. They don't look like themselves. They look tired. They look, but they're putting in the effort. They're trying. It's not a lack of effort. That I can tell for sure. But I do think there is something missing there, whether it's legs, because Arteta overuses players, or people playing through stuff. Because, like, for example, we didn't know Saka was suffering this much, and he played and played, I think, the whole Carabao Cup final, and nobody's seen him on a football pitch since. Jurriën Timber missed that final, and nobody has seen him on a football pitch since Bayer Leverkusen. Mr. Street Clothes himself, Riccardo Calafiori, he's on 1 week, and then he's gone for 2 weeks, and then he's back after 2 weeks, and then it's on and off, and that back four has been disrupted so much, and it's starting to look like the team is disjointed, because this team is built on defense, and when you have an exhausted Declan Rice, and who came from sickness to come and play this game, credit to him, and I'm glad the players voted him captain of this team, because he's definitely exhibiting all the qualities and all the heart, the toughness, and the footballing IQ as well, to be a leader in this team. It sounds like what Arteta says, it was the players who decided that Declan Rice should wear the arm and lead the team the last 2 games. And yes, he hasn't won a game yet as Arsenal captain, like from starting a match. As far as I can remember, that these last 2 games are the 2 that he started as captain. If there's one that I'm not remembering, hopefully somebody can correct me in the chat or something. But I think Arsenal have done quite well. I don't like the process of how we got here, and I'm not gonna be two-faced and lie about that. But like, I'm also not gonna yell at my players who have only lost just the fewest number of games this whole season of any football club. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do a sensational video just to get clips or whatever. Like, I just don't feel like that's me. I'm upset sometimes about things that happen on football matches, don't get me wrong. But I don't think having a go at these players in their biggest hour of need, with 6 games in the Premier League to go and 3 games total in the Champions League to go if you get through the semi-final, I don't think this is the time for me personally to lose my toys over anything. There's a lot I don't like about the way Arsenal played. We don't look like we're going to score a goal. Even the one goal we've scored in the last 2 games, it was a penalty that on a different day, that ball doesn't hit Ryan Christie's arm and it's not a penalty, right? And so our open play XG is piss poor. I'm not going to, knock all of that. I think there's enough footage and enough coverage of how bad Arsenal are going forward. I've done my fair share of that. Today, I'm not going to do that. Today, I'm going to say, well done, Mikel. Well done to the boys, because they've found a way and they're in the semi-final for 2 years running, something, that's never been done in Arsenal football history. And fair play to them. I don't know. I'm worried about the Etihad, but hopefully they have something for us there. That game is going to be just like the Carabao Cup final in a way. I don't think it's going to decide the league by itself. I think there's a lot of big games still following that one. That one, though, is the equalizer, right? If City wins it, and if Arsenal doesn't lose it or wins it, then they have, the upper hand slightly. But I think Arsenal could go to the Etihad and draw and still lose the title if we don't figure some things out, because, we don't get players back. So I think the one thing that would almost close the deal would be a win for Arsenal. But in this current form, I can't see Arsenal going to the Etihad and beating Manchester City on current form. Something is going to have to change drastically, and you may have to miraculously regain some players too on the health side of things. So this side of the semi-final bracket is sorted now. It's Arsenal through to play Atleti. Atleti have earned their spot, and I don't think these two teams are going to be anything like. It's almost like the PSG from last season, this semi-final, from the way I feel about it. Last year, Arsenal played PSG in the group league stage, because I keep saying group because that's what I've always said about Champions League. They played PSG in the league stage and they beat them 2-0, 2-1 or something like that at the Emirates. And then they met them in the semifinals of the Champions League, and both teams had basically changed their form from when they met in the fall, early winter. PSG was the informed team going into that semifinal, and Arsenal were without forwards, basically. And Saka was basically coming back from injury in the previous round, and you had no bench. You had Butler, Oyedeji, you had Raheem Sterling, you had kids in those benches. But it seems like Arsenal are likely to be in a similar spot with more options, obviously, than last year going into the semi-final. We'll talk about that closer to the time, but Arsenal are looking like a team that's struggling a little bit, while Atleti seems to have found solutions to some of their early season problems, and they're playing some of their better stuff at the moment. So I hope that we do find better answers for Sunday and for the semi-final. But I do think Cholo Simeone is maybe an example for Arsenal fans and Arsenal football board. I'm not saying this in defense of Arteta, but Cholo has been at Atleti for a decade and a half, and he's only won the La Liga trophy twice in about 15 or so years, because there are bigger forces that he's operating around, that are around him in Madrid and in Real Madrid and Barcelona, right? And never won the Champions League. I think he's done well in the Europa League here and there. I don't remember how many times, if he has won it. But I know that, the big one for a club the size of Atleti or Arsenal is the Champions League. And Cholo's never done it. He's lost some finals. When you remove yourself a little bit from the immediacy of the emotion, I wonder how many people could, with a sober mind, away from the limelight, all away from the clicks online, would feel Simeone is the next coach that Arsenal should go after. You know what I mean? Because I think in Arteta, you already have somebody like Simeone, and he started his career a lot faster and better than Simeone did in his. So I'm not saying I'm enjoying this stuff, by the way, this season. I liked early Arteta, but this Arteta ball, or whatever you want to call this, it might be just like maybe something he's decided with his team and the executives at the club that we need to find a way to win. However it looks, and if that's the case, then fine. Like we have to deal with it as the fans, as long as it hopefully brings something. Because I worry if this doesn't bring results, I worry for the boys. I worry for the manager, because as much as I don't like a lot of things, I think this guy cares about Arsenal. I think he's an Arsenal man. I know a lot of my friends like to say he should go back to Everton. He's an Everton legend, not an Arsenal legend. But Arteta is an Arsenal guy. He loves this club, and he's a culture fit, for what the club has been trying to do. He's cleaned up a lot of the dirt to get the club where it is. And I would like nothing more than to see him win. I really would. I would like nothing more than to see him win with his team, his way. And then let's see what happens after. I know a lot of people are talking about what if he doesn't win? What if he doesn't win? I want to talk about that when it does happen that he doesn't win. I don't, like I said, I don't really want to go all in on the negativity, because it's going around in big numbers. Lots of people complaining even yesterday, this performance doesn't breed confidence, or this performance, is not going to do the business against Man City. Everybody knows this. I think the players know this too. But you got to play each game as it comes. And in this particular tie, as much as they didn't win yesterday and didn't score a goal, they kept a clean sheet and found a way to get to the semifinals of the Champions League. This is not me gaslighting fans and saying don't be mad about stuff, because there's a lot to be mad about. I've said that several times on this recording, and there's a lot that I'm upset about too. But I'm just choosing for now to hold off on that stuff, because I said in my last recording, sometimes I choose to just shut up when I don't have something positive to say. I'm an Arsenal fan. I just happen to like speaking about it online and when with people at bars that I don't know. And I'm going to keep it positive for now, because there is a lot of positive. The season as a whole has been positive, and I'm not going to pretend like not winning the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup didn't hurt, but I'm also not going to pretend like I would have been happy if we won those two cups and we were already out of the Champions League and not competing for the Premier League title at this time in mid-April. I'm picking this poison. Of course, it's not guaranteed that we're going to win the league. It's not guaranteed that we're going to win the Champions League. There's a very big chance we'll win one. There's a very big chance we'll win none. But the facts are what they are. This team is still in contention. So as a supporter, like, I'm going to stick with my boys, and I'll bitch about stuff during the game. Don't get me wrong. I'll complain about stuff during the game. I'll be mad at Madueke dribbling the ball to the corner flag and all the way out. I'll be mad about Gyökeres. Instead of being a target man, a proper target man, the ball just bounces off of him and then the other team gets it. I'm going to be mad about the overusage of Martin Zubimendi from Mikel Arteta. Even though yes, last night he got himself the Man of the Match award. I was mad about it. I didn't like that Zubimendi played that game from the start and played 90 minutes. I didn't, and I still don't like that. But this is what we're doing, so okay. Arteta is the man who makes the decisions. Once he's made the decision, I'm going to roll with it. But everybody gets to do the fan thing the way they want, so I'm going to be respectful as well. Like you can hear in my tone, I'm not sitting here talking like a daddy and like, yelling at people for being mad about stuff. I just hope, though, the people who are loud about these things are also respectful of those who choose to not process the same way. We're not going to process pain the same way in our individual lives, and we're definitely not going to process pain or success the same way as fans of football clubs. So I'm going to end this half of the bracket here, and I will do a separate episode to speak about the Bayern Real Madrid side of the bracket and the Liverpool PSG side of the bracket. So I'm doing bonus content, I guess, this time, because usually I do just Arsenal stuff, but I'm looking at and Premier League stuff. But the Champions League is getting to the last 8, and this is the serious side of things now. And it's just fun to talk about these games and watch these games, because there's a lot of really, really talented footballers on show. And my God, we don't have a Messi, Ronaldo type thing going on right now, but there's like parity of talent, that Bayern front four, that Madrid talent attacking wise, the talent in the Barca team, the talent I did 25 minutes of recording here, which I will probably have to edit, but I won't edit this. Lamin Yamal is a freakishly gifted young man as a footballer. And for him to have performed the way he did under that level of pressure, especially in that first leg, playing with 10 men, and then coming back and repeating away from home in Madrid. Yes, it was in a failing effort, but Lamine Yamal, I hope he stays healthy. I hope he has people around him who are going to look after him as a person so that we can continue to enjoy the special talent that is this young boy. He's not even 20 yet. He's still a teenager. He's 18 years old. And you can make a good argument for best player in the world. Unfortunately, he's not going to be in the Ballon d'Or stuff unless Spain goes to the US, Mexico, and Canada and wins the World Cup. Barca looks like they're likely to win the La Liga trophy this year. But this kid is, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. If he wasn't playing in Barcelona, we'd be probably even more effusive in our praises of him. But because there was that other guy in Barcelona, he's in Miami now. There's that other guy. And so people are trying to not maybe put too much pressure on this kid and trying to, but I think the kid wants it. He wants all the smoke from anybody. And I like that he's a bit chirpy too. He talks a lot of trash. Woo! I love it. I love a player with attitude. And that's something, I guess, as an Arsenal fan, that I want to see from my forwards, that little bit of arrogance and swagger. I don't know where we're going to find it, but hopefully from somewhere in the next week or so, because it's a business at hand, guys. We can't be fooled falling off the cliff every time in April. This is the chance for Arteta and these boys at Arsenal to finally get it right. And they have it. They have it in them to get it right. But I've given up on the sexy. I just want the outcomes. All right. That was a long closing, but cheers.